You're looking for the best way to grill an amazing prime rib? Then you came to the right place. Stay tuned and I'll be walking you through my steps to grilling the perfect, juicy, medium rare prime rib, and I'm gonna be grilling it on my Weber kettle. Hello and welcome to Grillin' and Chillin' with Coleman. And unless the real Coleman is subbing for Santa this year, I'm Coleman. My mission is to help grilling and barbecue enthusiasts become the backyard grill master they've always wanted to be. All right, now two of the most popular cuts of meats during the holidays is prime rib and spiral sliced ham. Now my favorite is the ham, and it's definitely a staple in our family. If you need some help smoking yours, here's a video that might help out. But today, let's grill a prime rib together that'll knock your father-in-law's socks off. Let's get to grilling. So what is prime rib? Up until a few years ago, even I couldn't answer that question. I knew it was good, and I knew it came from a cow, but that's the extent of it. So where does prime rib come from? Well, it's a cut from the center of the primal rib, which is the largest and best part of the rib section on a cow. It's also called a beef rib roast, and it's one of the most tender, juicy, and flavorful cuts of beef, and that's why it's so expensive. Think about it. A cow spends its entire life on 4 legs. So unlike us humans, the cow does not use its back and rib muscles very much, so that meat stays very tender. Now, prime rib can be either cooked bone-in or boneless, but the only advantage I see to bone-in is for presentation. I feel you get a better cook with boneless, plus it's a whole lot easier to grill. Now, when picking out your boneless prime rib, figure on about a ½ pound of meat per person. So for 10 people, you need to get a 5-pound prime rib, and that's what we have here. For bone-in, figure on 1.5 pounds of meat per person. Now I picked this beautiful piece of meat up at my favorite butcher, Bluebonnet Meat Company here in North Texas. I'll put a link below to their Facebook page and their website. Now they'll take real good care of you, and tell them Coleman sent you. Ben the butcher cut this up special for me when I went by to see him a little earlier this week. Now, a little advice. Don't wait until the last minute to pick yours up. This cut is extremely popular around the holidays, and you usually can't get a good cut at your local grocery store. Another great thing about prime rib is it's extremely easy to cook, and it's really hard to mess up. Now, let's get this roast out of the package and get it trimmed up. We want our seasoning to be able to penetrate all sides of this prime rib, so I like to remove the fat cap, or at least most of it. Now, if you choose to leave it on, at least trim it down to about 1/8 of an inch thick. Now there's plenty of internal marbling on this roast, and it's going to add a lot of flavor. The best way that I found to trim these up is with a boning knife or a fillet knife. It's pretty flexible, and it really allows you to trim that meat nice and close. Just take the fat off a little bit at a time. Don't take it off in big hunks. And you want to try to leave that top as smooth as possible. Don't get in a hurry. You also want to remove any of that hard fat. This is really hard here. You want to get that off because, like I've said before in my videos, that stuff doesn't render off, and it's really not fun to eat. Just take it off a little bit at a time. Look at that internal marbling. Isn't that gorgeous? Now you want to try to leave the top of this nice and smooth. And that's really just for presentation. There's a big hunk of that. We really want to get rid of that hard fat that's in there. You see any silver skin that's left on here? You want to make sure you get that off too. So I got a little piece of it here on the end. You just want to give it a nice surface for all of our spices and things to be able to bond to. Looks like we probably cut off about 3/4 pound or maybe a whole pound off that. So that took it down to about 4 pounds. Now that we have it trimmed, we need to go ahead and add some salt in it to get it dry brining. Now the most important prep procedure of any prime rib is definitely the salting. Now this is a big cut of meat, and it can handle plenty of salt, and I like to do mine about 24 to 48 hours prior to cooking it. This gives the salt plenty of time to work its way deep into the heart of this roast. Now as a rule, I use 1 teaspoon of kosher salt per pound of meat. So in the dry brine mixture today, I'm going to be using 1.5 tablespoons of kosher salt, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, and 1 teaspoon of black pepper. We're going to mix this up really well, and then we're going to liberally coat it the outside of our roast, making sure you cover every square inch of the outside. And to make sure that we use it all, let's go ahead and roll it around on the cutting board to make sure we pick up any of that tried to escape. Perfect. Now the next step is we need to wrap this up in some plastic wrap. And to be honest with you, I hate plastic wrap. So I prefer to use a vacuum sealer for that. Now the purpose of the dry brine is to drive that seasoning deep into the heart of the meat. And a vacuum sealer really helps with that. I just picked up this 15-inch vacuum sealer at Bass Pro Shop the other day. And I'm gonna be doing a review on it after I've used it for a few months. Now it really makes the job easier. So what you do is you just seal up one end, put the roast in the bag, and then vacuum seal it. Then you want to place it back in the fridge to dry brine for 24 to 48 hours. That will give that salt plenty of time to do its magic. So I'll see you back in a couple days. Through the miracle of video, it's been 2 days. Welcome back. I went ahead and took this prime rib out of the refrigerator and unwrapped it. And you can see that the salt brine has really intensified the color of this roast. And I guarantee you it's also intensified the flavor. The next step we need to do is cover the entire outside with some herb compound butter. Now this herb butter will infuse a wonderful savory flavor into this prime rib, and it's also going to aid in getting a nice crust when we sear it later. This is what we need to put in it. 2 sticks of softened unsalted butter, 1 tablespoon of rosemary, 1 tablespoon of sage, 1 tablespoon of chopped garlic, and 1 tablespoon of thyme. Now we're going to get this all mixed together really well so that the herbs are distributed throughout the butter. But here's a word of warning. If you change the rub recipe, make sure you don't add anything that contains sugar, because if you do, when we sear it later, it's going to burn. Now if your butter's too hard, you can always stick it in the microwave for about 30 seconds and it'll soften up. You want it soft but not melted. Now we're going to spread the mixture over the entire prime rib and give it a good even coating. Make sure you cover all of the surfaces, even the ends. Now, due to the fact that there's a high fat content in this cut, we need to do something to help it hold its shape while it's cooking. To do that, we need to truss it up with some butcher's twine. Take 3 strings about 24 inches long and lay them out on your cutting board so that they're parallel with each other. Space them out about 1 inch or 2 apart. Then we're going to lay our prime rib right on top. Start at one end, and then we're going to tie this up with a double knot right on top. We're also going to cut off the excess before we put it on the grill. That way they don't catch on fire. All right, let's go get our grill ready while this comes up to room temperature. We're going to be setting up our Weber kettle today to grill over indirect heat. This prime rib is going to be smoking at 250 degrees for about 15 minutes per pound, but we're really cooking to temperature, not to time. Now, on my Weber kettle, we're going to be using my Vortex, placing it in the back of the grill. If you don't have one of these, I'll put a link below to the one that I use. Otherwise, push all the charcoal in your grill to the back and then smoke that meat up on the front of the grill. I'm also going to be using my CyberQ Cloud to monitor the temperature of the grill and of the meat. I flip the Vortex so the small opening is up. Then place it in the back of the grill and fill it up with charcoal briquettes. I never use lighter fluid, so I light it up with my propane torch. I let it burn for about 10 minutes and the lid goes back on, making sure the top exhaust vent is opposite the Vortex. Then I adjust the top vent to about halfway open and the bottom vent to about 1/3 open. Now that the temperature is stabilized, it's time to add some smoke wood. For prime rib, I like to use a mixture of pecan and cherry. This mixture gives a really nice light smoke to the prime, and it really adds a lot of flavor to that beef. You can place it directly on the coals, but I prefer to place a small chunk of each on top of the grill grates just above the vortex. Close the lid and let this smoke for about 10 minutes before we put that prime rib on the grill. Before we put that meat on the grill, we need to set up our drip pan to catch all those juices. Now this really helps keep our grill clean, plus we're gonna use these juices later. Now I start off with a tinfoil pan that's a little larger than the roast that I'm gonna put above it. And what I put in here is 4 cups of beef broth, 1 chopped onion, 2 chopped carrots, and then I'm also gonna add 1 tablespoon of peppercorns, 1 tablespoon of rosemary, 1 tablespoon of thyme, and then I'm gonna mix in 1 tablespoon of chopped garlic. We're gonna get this all mixed up well, and then it's gonna go on the grill underneath the meat. Our smoke is turned from a gray color to almost clear, and the temperature is stabilized right at 250 degrees, so it's time to put that prime rib on. First, lift the grill grate and place the drip pan in the bottom of the grill. Replace the grill and place the prime rib fat side up over the drip pan. Then insert your temperature probe into the center of the roast. And close the lid, again making sure that the top vent is opposite the vortex. This will help draw the smoke over the meat and out the top vent. We're going to let this roast smoke on the grill till it reaches an internal temperature of 128 degrees. But because most of the heat is coming from one side of the meat, I'm going to flip it end for end several times throughout the cook. Now this whole cook should take about 2 to 3 hours, but it all depends on your grill. Now we'll see you back when it's ready to wrap. My CyberQ cloud is telling me that it's reached an internal temperature of 128 degrees, but I'm going to check it with my instant read just to make sure. Man, look at that color. That is just perfect. As I mentioned before, I've been turning it end for end about every hour so it can get an even cook because all my heat's coming from the back. Let's go ahead and check it with my instant read. I'm showing right at 128 degrees internal temperature, so it's time to take it off. While it's resting, I like to wrap it in foil to help retain the heat. I also need to remove my temperature probe from the grill. We need to get our grill up over 500 degrees, and those high temps can ruin your probes. To get my grill up to 500 degrees, I need to open the bottom vent all the way and leave the lid off. I'm also going to be searing my prime rib in a cast iron skillet, so place it directly over the vortex to heat up. And spray the pan with a little avocado oil to keep it from sticking. Our next step is to do a sear on all sides of the prime rib. This is challenging to do properly on a roast like this. There are a couple different techniques to do it right. You can sear over direct flames on your grill, you can sear it in a preheated cast iron skillet, or you can use a flame device such as a torch to put that final sear on the meat. Whichever method you choose, be careful not to scorch the meat. The meat is already cooked and does not take much to take it too far at this stage. The best way I've found to do this is in a cast iron skillet over the vortex. All the sides need to be seared evenly, so I like to flip it about every 90 seconds. Making sure all sides get an even sear. Once all sides are seared, it needs to be pulled off and wrapped for its final rest for another 30 minutes. While it's resting, let's go ahead and make up our au jus sauce. Our last step before we cut into this prime rib is to make our au jus sauce. Now we're going to be using the contents from our dripping pan as a base for this. First, strain off all the solids like the onions and carrots. Then pour it into a fat separator and let it sit and separate. If you don't have a separator, I'll put a link below to the one that I use. You can also use a large glass measuring cup to separate off that fat, and use a turkey baster to pull the broth off the bottom. With the fat separator, all you need to do is let the fat rise to the top, then push the button to drain the beef broth off the bottom. Then release the button when there's just fat left in the bowl. Save about 1/8 of a cup of the fat as we're going to be using it next. Next, pour a small portion of the fat into the saucepan. This fat will rise to the top of our ramekins when we serve the au jus sauce and help keep it hot. Heat it up over medium heat for a few minutes, then add in 1 tablespoon of all-purpose flour. This will help cook that flour and get rid of the raw flavor. Next, pour the broth into the saucepan, slowly mixing while pouring. Once it's all mixed in, stir in 1/2 a cup of red wine, 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, and 1/4 cup of cooking sherry. Turn the heat up and bring it to a slow boil, then reduce the heat to low. Now taste to see if you need to add any salt. Once you're happy with it, remove it from the heat. It's now ready for the prime rib. But before we cut into this prime rib, let's review what we did. We started off by trimming and dry brining our roast for 48 hours. Then we made and covered our prime rib with our compound herb butter. Next, we heated our grill to 250 degrees and put on our roast to smoke over indirect heat. Once it hit an internal temperature of 128 degrees, we took it off to rest while we heated up our grill to 500 degrees. Then it was time to sear it on all sides and pull it off for the final rest. And lastly, while it was resting, we made up some of our beef au jus sauce from the drip pan. Well man, I can't wait. Let's go ahead and get this thing unwrapped. Now this tin foil is going to be full of a lot of our juice, and we're going to want to save that. So let's take that prime rib off of there. We're going to pour that juice into our ramekin. First thing we're going to do, we need to get these strings off of here. Man, that sear gave it just a perfect color. That is just gorgeous. That sear we did gave it an amazing color. Let's cut into it to see how it came out. Wow. You can see that it came out a perfect medium rare. And you can see why this cut of meat has always been my holiday favorite. It is just so juicy and it's falling apart. Oh man, that looks good. Cut off a couple slices. Man, that is just gorgeous. And it smells heavenly. Man, I'm gonna take that piece right there. Man, you can see it's just super moist. That is amazing. Let's dip it in that au jus sauce. Holy cow, that is good. That is some good stuff. And you can see why this has always been my holiday favorite. Wow, that is some great stuff. I guarantee if you make this for your next holiday party, you're going to get invited to a lot of parties. Now that was an outstanding prime rib. I would be proud to serve that at any dinner here at the GNC Kitchen. And by the way, we just got in a batch of our Grillin' and Chillin' stickers, and I'd love for you all to have one. Just go to my website and click on the Contact Us page. Send me your mailing address and I'll ship one right out to you, and I'll even pay for the shipping. Don't forget to join our Grillin' and Chillin' community on Facebook and Instagram. I'll put the links below. Leave me a comment below what you'd like to see in some upcoming videos, because I want to continue to truly make videos that help you become the backyard grill master you've always wanted to be. Thank you again for joining me in the GNC Kitchen. If you like this video, here's a few more you might like. Also, please like below and click the subscribe button here, and don't forget to ring that bell. It'll let you know when I got some new videos coming out. I always enjoy spending time with you in the GNC Kitchen and sharing my recipes. Now y'all go grill something.